an exorcism.
Hi, and welcome to the Adelaide Horror Podcast. This is your host, Zombie Joe, and today's episode is number 27. And I'm going to be talking about William Blackley's The Exorcist from 1973. Possibly, as they say, it's the greatest horror film ever made. It's the only R-rated horror film to actually win awards. And it was the highest grossing Warner Brothers movie ever made. So it's funny how it's this real entity in itself, and that you could just mention the title to somebody, and even if they haven't seen it, they're already saying, yeah, no, I'm not watching that. And the reason being is because of, like myself, speaking from experience, it was a good 20 years before I kind of really put my big boy pants on and sat down to watch this, even though I'd seen other horror movies before. This was not only the flagship, this was the big bad. This was the big kahuna. And I didn't feel like I was ready to watch this. And this was purely because I was psyched out by so many people saying it's the scariest thing they've ever seen. The adults, I think it was, for me, it was the adults, or there's different layers, and I'll get into that. The adults saying it was the scariest thing they've ever seen. Rational family members that aren't big on watching horror films, stating that they watched this film, they laughed all the way through it, and then they got home and completely freaked out because they had to walk in the dark to the back of the house, and suddenly Reagan's face was appearing everywhere. And it was just that it is that sneaky movie that does sneak up on you, and that's why I think it is one of the ultimate terror films, because your brain processes it, but it doesn't hit you until later. I enter the house, to go to the kitchen or whatever, everything's dark, and I would be picturing that smiling face, in the dark somewhere for no apparent reason, but it was just my brain doing that to me. And so that's the power of this movie. The movie's long gone and packed up and on a shelf, and that's it. And it was done in 1973, but here it is haunting me in the 2000s. That's the power of the film. And so to go back and explain kind of why this thing gave me the massive heebies, being from an Italian background, I was baptized and raised Roman Catholic. And so it wasn't the fact that I would go to church and hear the priest go, rah, 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 the devil all the time, but it was just The Exorcist was like, wow, this is someone who fell victim to a demonic possession, and not by her fault. This is a completely innocent person who got spiritually attacked. And that kind of freaked me out, because I thought, she's not a bad person. She's not like a serial killer or someone going out actively being bad against somebody. And you'd think that person would then attract, a demonic attack or something because they're bad. So I kind of grappled with that growing up as a kid. And as I got older and kind of researched more, and, I kind of started to understand what good and bad was about. So then you add the other layer of, my dad was a police officer in Italy in 1973 when The Exorcist came out, and he was stationed in Rome. So Rome at that time, the Vatican had put a veto on this movie being watched in Rome and said, nah, you're not doing it. They actually tried to ban it in Italy completely, but that was pretty unrealistic. And so Rome itself couldn't watch it. So if you could drive, so what was happening was Dad was explaining that the younger kids, like his age, and he was young himself, he was in his 20s, so everyone kind of that wanted to see The Exorcist drove out of Rome and into the next town that was showing it. So the equivalent, to explain it in Adelaide terms, would be driving from the Adelaide CBD to Mount Barker. It wasn't a big drive, but, kids had to go and drive elsewhere to see it as a loophole in order to watch this movie that was so forbidden. And all it did was just add, it kind of blew up in their face a bit, because all it did was just added that mystique, that more mystique, and made it more forbidden, so it made it more desirable. So it really, if the Vatican kind of didn't jump up and down like they did, it wouldn't have really, you know what I mean? People would have gone, yeah, it's a possession movie. But the interesting thing too was speaking from some, now my grandma's brother, so my great uncle, was a monk stationed in Sicily, but actually was an exorcist for real. So he would go when the Vatican would say, right, you've got this person, such and such person in this location in whatever part of the world it is, has been proven to be under possession, to go out and perform an actual exorcism. So, yeah, that's what he did. So that kind of, growing up, I was thinking, shit, I'm actually related to someone that's an exorcist. So that added that other level to the average other kid in that video shop looking at the Exorcist title. So and that kind of weighed a little bit heavy on me as well. Someone innocent as Reagan in the film can get attacked, then fuck, like it could happen to me. And I think, like I said, that's what scared a lot of people about this film. So you add all these variables into it. So, like I said, I'm little Joe standing in the video shop looking at the title of The Exorcist thinking, oh shit, this is quite a scary movie. And as I grew older, I was still that same kid standing in the video shop going, do I hire The Exorcist or do I hire something else? And I would always hire something else because, I'd just kind of always end up chickening out, So how it happened to me that I ended up finally coming across to watching The Exorcist was way into the 90s, way into my mid-teens. What, funnily enough, came across my radar was when I was about 12, I was at a sleepover, another sleepover, not the one where we watched Child's Play. But another sleepover, and this guy again had older siblings, and his dad was also Italian, and he had a pretty decent stockpile of Playboys, both American and Italian, right? And so the Italian Playboys, so we had these Playboys scattered all over the room, and we were flicking through the pages, just being 12-year-old kids, in my actual stack of Playboys. That with the Italian Playboys was Linda Blair's photo shoot. I didn't know who she was at the time, and so I had this Playboy in my hand. I had the centerfold out, and there's Linda Blair in all her glory, kind of thing. And the older brother just went past, and I just remember, and he goes, "Oh yeah, that's the chick from The Exorcist." And I was like, "What?" And I looked up and I went, "The Exorcist?" And he goes, yeah, that's the girl on the bed that, throws up and fucking head spins. And I was like, fuck. And then as soon as he said that, I got that image of that smiling, dynamic Reagan, and I went, fuck. So, but I stared at her face, and I was like, how is this chick, that scary monster from that picture that terrified me so badly? And it kind of I went, wow, that's some crazy makeup, to do that. So that kind of planted that seed of, wow, the power of special effects and how well, if it's done right, how scary this thing can be. They can make something really, as sweet as Reagan looking to something so scary. So I kind of went, okay, years pass, and it's the mid-90s. So at this point, The Exorcist 3 had come out, and my dad had hired it on video. So, and this is when he spoke to me about when he was a police officer in Italy when The Exorcist, the movie, came out, and all this weird shit that was going on. And he says, to kind of ad-lib and quote him, he goes, the religious and the satanic nut jobs came out. These are just people that are like, oh, I'm the devil, and start just doing all this weird stuff like smearing shit on the wall. He had to deal with them. And he goes, it was almost like there was a full moon every week. He was just dealing with, animal mutilations, people trying to kill their kids, and they just blame this movie, all the time. And Dad goes, this is ridiculous. What is this film? So he watched it, and he goes, what the fuck was everyone on about? He goes, it's just the movie. He goes, it won't this won't, you know, make the devil jump out and take you. So that's what he said to me. He's just like, you know, if you want to see The Exorcist, watch The Exorcist, but know that it's a movie. It's not going to come and get you. You know, it's not going to jump out of the film and take your soul. Like, I can watch this movie and it won't affect me anymore. And like I said, as I got older, the heebies kind of wore off. And because I had experienced and I had seen, or you turn on the news and you see way more heavier, horrific shit going on in the real world than in what this movie was supposed to show me, like in an hour and 2 minutes or something. Like, and so Dad was like, yeah, you know, I remember one time this guy, there was a soldier, they had a call out to the movie theater, and eventually the movie was shown in Rome, so people could go and see it. Anyway, The Exorcist was shown. They got called out because this movie theater attendant was super spooked and said, this guy's not moving. Like, and he's just staring at the screen. And because this kid had seen The Exorcist so many times on the big screen in front of him, the imagery was burned into his brain. So you just imagine this guy, the palpable tension, because it's a dark theater. The lights have come back on. This guy's trying to clean the theater, and there's a guy staring straight at the screen with his head up, staring at the screen and not responding to him. And so this kid's probably thinking, shit, he's possessed or something, or this guy's head's going to turn around and throw up green. You know what I mean? You can almost imagine it. And so he, you know, rings the cops and, you know, come down. So Dad and his partner gets called to go. And so Dad goes down the theater, and he's got he's taken one lane down. His partner's taken the other lane down. They're shining the torches on him, but they have their guns drawn. Now, the reason why, because at that time, separate to this conversation, there was a group called the Red Brigade, and they were attacking and killing cops, and they would set them up into ambushes. So for my dad, he wasn't thinking that this was something about possession. My dad was actually approaching this as, this guy's going to fucking ambush us, like, and shoot us in a theater. So my dad's fear was something else, not a satanic film. Anyway, so he approaches the guy, and sure enough, they, you know, come face level to him, and they realize that this guy's actually died of a heart attack. And he had a soldier's uniform on, his eyes were wide, he was staring straight at the screen with his mouth open. And my dad said, I can't get that guy's face, like, out of my mind. Like, he goes, it just burned into him. And he was thinking, you know, what the fuck is with this movie? Like, that it's just so powerful that now it's just freaked this guy out so badly that he's like, it pretty much induced a heart attack. Like, so, and I was thinking to myself, shit, you know, do I want to see The Exorcist 3 now? Like, because, you know, is it going to be like this? Dad goes, look, you're all right. You're with me. It's all good. So I watched The Exorcist 3, or kind of on and off, and I got hit. The only thing that scared the fuck out of me out of Exorcist 3, naturally enough, is that jump scare that we all know about. All jumped, like, we weren't ready for that, and then we had to pause the movie and quickly clean up the soft drink on the carpet and the popcorn, vacuum the floor, and dust the couch off, because our snacks went flying. But the rest of the movie I found fascinating. This kind of started it for me. Like, okay, I think I can see The Exorcist now, but I still was a little bit chicken shit, and I didn't go in and touch it. And then Leslie Nielsen's Repossessed. I remember my parents, it was Naked Gun. You know, we knew this was taking the piss. Like, and I watched it, we all laughed through it. So what made me feel more comfortable going, okay, if we can laugh at this, and Linda Blair, like, my dad was going, this is the girl that was in the film The Exorcist. So then I'm putting together the nude Linda Blair from when I was 12 to the woman that is Linda Blair now in this funny movie, taking the piss out of herself and her role that made her famous. And I thought, you know what, I'm ready to go. Like, I think I can get into The Exorcist. So I was wrong. I chickened out fucking again. Anyway, so I went to the video shop and I hired Exorcist 2, because I thought, okay, The Exorcist 2 will kind of, this is me dipping my toe into the pool of the Exorcist universe, right? And so yeah, wow, I started getting into it and I fell asleep, right? And I woke up going, what the fuck was that? Like, and I thought, I'm not watching it, and I returned it going, what is that movie? That was shit. So then fast forward another 10 to my 30s, and that's when I sat down and I watched it, because I went, no, I'm cool now. I can watch this movie and no, nothing's going to happen. So this is how long this journey took. And so I had read the book at that point, and it got me interested. At this point too, I started, like I said, got interested in the makeup and special effects and all this kind of stuff, about how a horror film was made. And I watched the documentary about how they made the film, and it introduced me to Dick Smith. Not that Dick Smith. They introduced me to Dick Smith, and basically learnt that Dick Smith was the mentor for Tom Savini. And when I heard this, I was like, wow, so that's why Tom Savini videos and records all his makeup demos and everything like that, because he wants to see if it works or not, like visually. And so he's doing the videos and the makeup thing for Reagan for The Exorcist. So there was many takes of what Reagan was supposed to look like until the final one had occurred. So one of the outtakes of Reagan's face was the Pazuzu thing that you see in that split second thing in the background in the dark, and you see it really quickly, and people are like, what the fuck? Like, did you see that? Like, that face? And everyone's like, what face? Like, it was done on purpose. It kind of reminded me of the naked Brad Pitt dick shot in Fight Club. It was kind of that subliminal quick flick of an image, and everyone's like, did I just see that? Like, kind of thing. And so that's kind of how it was used throughout the movie, and they recycled what was a failure and made it a success, because people really got freaked by that face. Like, and so did I. I was like, the fuck is that? Like, and growing up, I always either saw that face or I saw the smiling Reagan face. And the smiling Reagan face terrified the shit out of me. This thing ran my blood cold, thanks to fantastic special effects by Dick Smith, and so yeah, that was to me the ultimate kind of fear imagery. Was the scariest thing I've ever seen, and so now you get what the psyche was of people, young people in their 20s back in 1973, when they see this movie for the first time, and everyone's like, holy shit, like, because these people, you've got to understand, had seen before this Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby, and the ending of Rosemary's Baby was the holy shit moment. Like, and so the people coming out of the theatre or knowing of Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby, coming out of that holy shit moment at the end of the film, and then not thinking about it until 1973, and then coming to the movie and then going to myself, oh yeah, this is the other satanic movie that I haven't seen yet. Oh yeah, that reminds me of that end scene from Rosemary's Baby. So everyone goes in then thinking about Rosemary's Baby. That projector starts in their mind. They start thinking about it. It starts to get into their psyche, and suddenly, bang, The Exorcist unfolds out in front of them, especially, 40 minutes into this film. It goes from a science part of the film to straight spiritual dynamic, the church versus men. And people's minds were just collectively blown, like either spiritually or, just imaginary, holy shit, I've never seen anything like this before. So that's why this film was incredibly powerful when it came out. You could not make another film like this again. So now you've got a film. Let's get into the kind of the nitty gritties of this movie. Now, William got inspired to to write the script and to write this book by coming across a real life true event that happened in the 40s to a young 14-year-old boy. Now, this book was written by Troy Taylor, and the book is called When the Devil Comes to St. Louis. Now, the 14-year-old boy, his name is Roland Doe. Now, all jokes aside, like, that is the greatest name for a baker I've ever met. Like, Roland Doe's or something, Roland Doe's Bakery. But legitimately recorded, yes, this guy has been possessed by a demon, right? Now, again, this is a thing where someone innocent has been spiritually attacked, and this is where it makes it scary. So the thing that's interesting about this is that Troy Taylor made many additions to this book, but never mentioned the kid's name. Now, the reason why this kid never got mentioned is because it's actually one of the rules for the Vatican that you can't talk about the person who had been under this spiritual attack. It's to protect their identity, because after the demonic possession is over and said demon or entity is out of their life, that person goes back to being the person that they were. So you don't want the stigma of, oh yeah, I'm the fucking demo boy from down the road, forever and ever and ever. And it didn't matter what you did. You were just going to be that kid that got possessed by the demon and was fucking weird one summer, And so that's one of the rules of the Vatican. Story that was told to me by my dad, my great uncle, who attended a possession of a girl in South America. And this girl fell under the influence of a demonic being. The tests were made. Initially, everyone was like, she's got schizophrenia or whatever. No, that wasn't the case. So all these other tests were made by the priest around that area, and they said, no, she's showing signs of a demonic possession. And this is pre-Exorcist or anything like that, and my understanding was this was the 60s. So what I could kind of date stamp this story, being of what my great uncle's age was at the time. And so him and a team were put together, and he was asked to go on the behalf of the Vatican, who gave the green light and said, yes, no, these are showing signs of demonic possession, and off you go. Because they had certain ticks that they had to go, yes, this is what it is, before they could send anyone there. Because the first off, and even in this movie it shows you, the priests immediately throwing the mental health thing down. They're just going, no, she's schizophrenic, no, she's got this, it's mental health, blah, blah, blah. It could be this health reason, it could be that health reason. They didn't immediately go, it was a demon, like they would have done in the 16th century. So anyway, long story short, Uncle kind of gets the green light. Yeah, you're off you go with these other priests. You're going to do this possession, you're going to exorcise the demon for this girl. Anyway, so he gets there, and like I said, ad-libbing from what my dad was telling me, basically he walked in the door. The second priest walked in the door. The third priest behind him walked in the door. And this girl turns around and looks at the third guy and points at him. And in a man's voice, in Italian, says, who is this man who loves women more than his own God? And starts laughing, right? And that third priest fainted, and they took him out of the room. So my uncle, my great uncle, and this other priest had to do the exorcism right on their own, not with three. So it made it a bit harder. So this exorcism took longer to perform because they struggled against whatever this thing was. Eventually it was taken out. They got its name. He didn't say what its name was, and he wasn't going to say what its name was. Afterwards, my great uncle said to him, what was that about? And this guy was just pale, and he goes, I'm leaving the priesthood. The demon called me out. And it is right. I've been ever since I joined the priesthood, I've struggled with the celibacy rule, and I've been frequently visiting this prostitute every weekend. And we have a regular thing going on where I go and see her So, but the demon caught it out on him. And when you read this book, The Devil Comes to St. Louis, and the priests involved, they talk about the rites of exorcism. So there's certain different prayers and ticks and things that are marked off before you start an exorcism, or before you go, right, we're going to go down to this person and start this exorcism. So there had to be signs that something was off. And one of the signs was the fact that she knew things that she wouldn't have known. One, being her age. Two, she had never left the village. Three, she only spoke the Spanish dialect of that village and nothing else. And so the fact that she could call out this priest on something that they wouldn't know in Italian, in a man's voice that wasn't her own, kind of, was kind of spooky to hear it. But it is what it is, and that's the story. So when you pick up the book like The Devil Comes to St. Louis, and you're reeling Troy Taylor's kind of investigations into this, and to demonology and stuff like that, it becomes like, yeah, this isn't a flight of fancy. This shit's real. And it could quite easily happen if you're not aware of it. Don't be scared of it. Just be aware of it. And be realistic on how you approach it. So when Troy Taylor's recent edition came out, he mentioned the boy's name, which was Roland Doe, and he was 14. Now, the Vatican withheld his name for that reason, because Roland Doe then passed away, and Troy Taylor, being respectful to Roland, had withheld his name and his identity so he could live a normal life. Troy was in the book saying that this Roland Doe, because they withheld his name, he goes on to work for NASA and invents the protective coating around a shuttle so when it re-enters, it doesn't burn up in re-entry. Now, that fascinated me, because I thought, holy shit, there was this kid at 14 who was succumbed and was possessed by a demon, successfully had an exorcism achieved. The Vatican clears him of this possession. He goes back to being the normal 14-year-old boy that he was. Right? He then grows up, becomes, rocket scientist, whatever, goes to NASA, invents this fantastic device that saves astronauts that is used up until this day now. And, we would have only known him as Roland Doe, the possessed kid from fucking down the street, at 14. If his name and ID was identified back then in the 40s, he wouldn't have had a normal life at all. He wouldn't have gone to NASA. He wouldn't have invented this thing in the rocket. It's amazing, the sliding doors thing, and so that's why it's very important, and that's why the Vatican doesn't divulge people that have had this happen. It protects their identity. I found that interesting in the research for this movie. Now, it was directed by William Friedkin. He was quite an interesting character. Very tough on the actors and actresses through this movie. It was kind of like another Stanley Kubrick, really. And I don't know if it's because it was the 70s and that's how all these kind of directors acted or behaved, but he had come across like that. Linda Blair was quite pissed off because one of his devices broke, and that's why she's got a fractured lower back in the bed. Flapping scene where she's going up and down on the bed, the actual device broke and started flinging her everywhere. So then when you see the making of The Exorcist, you see her crying and everyone runs to her because it actually fractured her back. In that scene, and you see her crying because her back's fractured. I mean, that's really hard to watch, knowing now what had physically happened to her. The thing about, now you can watch Cursed Films, which was on Shudder, season 1, episode 1. Straight off the bat, they start off with The Exorcist, right? I really take that shit with a pinch of salt. I don't believe it for a minute. That the set wasn't fucking cursed. You know, Satan wasn't there fucking around with the scripts and, you know, people, I nearly died in this plane crash. Or, you know, the one that I thought was really funny was like the whole entire set, there was a fire on set, the whole set burnt down except Reagan's room. Well, yeah, because they fucking refrigerated it because for this scene where there's the mist coming out of her mouth where they made this the thing close. So that probably acted as a fire retardant, hence why that room didn't catch fire. But such was the psyche that people aren't thinking rationally. They're automatically going, oh, there's something fucking satanic about this film. It's not. And I kind of lean either way. I've got that religious side, but I've also got the science side of it as well. I'm interested in the science, the kind of the guts and the bolts of what this is about. So I'm very open-minded and I investigate all angles and all avenues of this, not just, this is what it is and that's it. So the whole curse stuff is just a crock of shit. And the PR stunting for this film was phenomenal. And it is so phenomenal that it was out-psyching me from the mid 80s well into the 2010s. The PR from 1973 was scaring me. You know, that's how powerful this you know, the power of promotion. So in the Shudder episode, it was interesting because it talked about the girl that was like, my job was to go around and make this thing look so scary. So Linda Blair was saying this girl who she was talking to said she would make phone calls and get ambulances to park out in front of the theatre to build the atmosphere that this thing was so bad that you'll end up in a stretcher, you know, and all this kind of stuff. So that's kind of, you know, you add that fear element. People are already going in, peaking, like I said, seeing the ambulance, then having seen probably in the 60s Rosemary's Baby, they're sitting in this theatre, the lights go down, you hear the tubular bells thing, McNeil's walking down the street, you know, it's a slow cranking build up to this terror that hits you. It cost $11 million to make. In 73 money, so I don't know what the conversion rate would be now, but the grossing thing, this is phenomenal amount of money. Now, in the US, it grossed $233,500,644. Now, before I'm going to say I want that in my bank account, here is the worldwide grossing total, which is $441,306,145. Holy shit. That is what I want in my bank account. Wow. What an absolute fucking... That is amazing, the amount of dollars that it created. That was phenomenal. But like I said, you know, people would have gone to see it. They would have said to their friend, you got to see this movie. The preview was saying this is the scariest film you've ever seen. You know, the hype and whatever got people's asses in seats and they paid the money. And now it just, boof, it blew up. So it's a 2-hour movie, and 40 minutes into this, like I said, it's a slow crank up. Now, it's not majorly scary, but it's 40 minutes of this kind of build up, and then it all hits you all at once, because even unlike a Conjuring movie, you know, Reagan's talking about, oh yeah, this is the Ouija board, and the mum, and it's just a scene where they're in a basement, you know, they're just kind of walking around the basement, and the mum, because she's catching up with her because she's come off a set, she's a movie star, she's come off the set. You know, Reagan's talking about wanting to buy a pony, you know, all this kind of stuff. And then just in conversation, this thing comes up. Oh, what's this? Oh, it's a Ouija board. Oh, yeah, I use it all the time. We used it as a friend's sleepover. And I was talking to Captain Howdy, right? And that's how this thing manages to get in, actually attack Reagan. And it's an interesting point too, because when my dad was talking about my great uncle and this story about this South American girl that got possessed, he said what he warned my dad was to don't fuck around with Ouija boards, because in the 70s the Ouija board thing was a big deal when everyone was doing it. And so he said to my dad, hey, just be wary of the Ouija board. Don't kind of fuck around with it too much, because the person you're thinking you're contacting could be an entity pretending to be that person. And it's a bit like Russian roulette. You keep spinning the chamber and eventually you're going to get the bullet. So don't fuck around with it kind of thing, and be careful. And so that always stuck with me. So then when I actually sat down to watch The Exorcist, she pulls out the Ouija board. I'm thinking, fuck, like 2 and 2 together. If this was The Conjuring, there would be a whole half an hour sequence seeing this Ouija board move around, and it would have spelled out Captain Howdy, and fucking, you would have seen Reagan's eyes roll over, or some weird clapping in the background, some shit. But the way this was so written, it was a real blink you miss it. Like, she just goes, oh yeah, it's Captain Howdy, blah, 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 next scene, right? And then it's, they're playing the piano and all the friends are over, and she walks in and she goes, you're going to die. And she doesn't look well, and then does this massive piss on the floor in front of Father Dyer, who's playing the piano, and this guy, you're going to die. And he's like, fuck, McNeil apologizes and sends Reagan back up into her room, and it kind of kicks off from there. And then the science of this scene starts, where they're doing, brain scans, CT scans, and all this shit, and she's screaming through this whole thing. So you see the medical side of it, and that got me interested. I was thinking, yeah, shit, okay, what is the medical explanation for this? Because I've had the religious explanation all the time. It's the devil, he's got a legion of demons, blah, 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 don't fuck around, or kind of boiled down, the kind of Catholic view on that. Now, so it got me wanting, and because I'm like science and that kind of stuff, I was like, I want to see the scientific explanation of this, not the religious one, because I've had it all the time. I want to see what other people are saying about this. And so I kind of looked into it, and I came across a thing called DID, dissociative identity disorder. This was fascinating for me, because I thought, wow, here is a scientific name to the thing that is what someone possessed looks like. So it's, behavior, voice changes, physical strength, demeanor, everything. And so this is the science behind it, or the name behind it. So the Vatican and stuff like that, when they before they send out their team to perform the rites of exorcism, they send out the psychologists. And they'll send out a psychologist that isn't religious, and they'll send out a Catholic psychologist. And they will work together and go to this person, have a look at what they are, do their tests, and then come back and say, yes, this is multiple personality, or DID, and no, you don't need to bring out the exorcism team. Or, there is proof of this, these rites have been done, and the Catholic priest would go back and say, yes, we need the team here, exorcism team assemble, or some shit, like, and they'll go out and they'll perform their exorcism. So there's many protocols and steps before a priest walks into a room with a cross holding the Bible, saying we're going to, and starts throwing holy water. There's a lot of steps. Like I said, they cover the science stuff of Reagan, and you see her tormenting happen while all these science experiments are happening, and these medical experiments are happening, because they're trying to investigate if she actually has a mental issue or a physical health issue. And in doing so, she's weathering around and getting really pissed off, and it's not her, it's the demon inside of her. And then it's not until the hypnosis session happens when Pazuzu comes out in a full fucking swing and takes over, and that's when we get the full-blown she comes back, slaps her mum, grabs the crucifix, starts stabbing herself in it. There was a guy that had tied Miss McNeil, who's actually played by Ellen Burstyn. She gets flung across the thing because Freakin says, yank the thing, give it all you got, and send her flying, because the original take looks shit. Linda Blair slaps her and it doesn't look good on camera, and Freakin's like, nah, it doesn't look real, and says to the guy on the rope, yank it, like, give it all you got, and he does, and that's why you see her fly into the side cabinet, and she's in pain, like, because her back hits the cabinet and bends her backwards where her head almost hits the glass of the bedroom window. And she's, she's got the blood of Reagan on her face. And that scene was quite confronting, but, it's to add to that tenseness of that film. So this Pazuzu that everyone is brought up and eventually found out through this movie, because the priests have after this verbal tussle for ages, finally says its name. And so Pazuzu actually is, there's two kind of, they're not twins, but and I don't know if they're siblings, but they're worshipped in Iraq, entity that Muslims are aware of in their Islamic faith. But there's two of them. There's Pazuzu and there's Lamazu, and that's spelled Lamashu. Now, apparently Pazuzu is the lesser of the evils, apparently, and that pregnant women of the time, that head that you see Father Merrin hold at the start of the film, is actually what women wear on themselves when they're pregnant, and it's to protect their fetus when they're pregnant, because apparently Lamazu is the worst one and goes after the kids. And so I found that interesting while researching, and as the other Exorcist movies goes on, you get to kind of see what this one's about, and it's really explained more in the Exorcist the beginning. So yeah, I found that interesting while the thing, and that's why you find this head in the ground, and why we see a very old Father Merrin at the start of the movie, and then you see that massive statue of Pazuzu. If you're really interested in finding out more about The Exorcist, there is a 3-part by guys called Astonishing Legends. These guys are really, really good. They're in my podcast circle that I go to when I'm researching or listening, or when I'm going for my hikes. They happen to do a three episode. They go for an hour and a half each, and episode 3 goes for 3 hours, and it goes into the science and the psychology of an exorcism, and it's fascinating. And this is where I learned a lot of stuff that I didn't know, and so it really quenched my kind of thirst for the science behind this. So heavily recommended. Astonishing Legends, really, really great. You can get docos on YouTube about this, and then of course you can get the book Devil Comes to St. Louis by Troy Taylor. And if you get the current edition, it talks about Roland Doe. And now Doe, I didn't explain before. Doe is spelled D-O-E, as in Jane Doe and John Doe, because they still kept his last name withheld, but his first name is Roland. So definitely recommends on that one. And like I said, so the cast for this is, who's playing Miss Chris McNeil is Ellen Burstyn. Reagan McNeil is played by Linda Blair. Father Merrin is played by Max von Sydow, who's a Swedish actor. And Father Damien Karras, played by Jason Miller. And then you have Father Dyer, is He's the friend for Father Karras, and he's also in Exorcist 3 as well, played by another character, Regan's sister, played by Kitty Wynn. She also too then appears in The Exorcist 2. She's in that as well. And so she's kind of comforting her mum. She doesn't understand what's going on. And you just see this kind of unfolding of desperation of Miss McNeil trying to work out what is going on with her daughter, because like I said, 40 minutes prior to this, you're seeing Regan as this fun, caring, sweet 14-year-old girl, and when you see her change, and it's incredible acting on Linda Blair's part. Like, this is amazing acting. Like, she's no slouch. Like, she came into this, she had done numerous commercials, photo shoots as a kid. Her main goal was to be a vet, but she was actually pursued by Disney. Like, and she could have been the face of Disney, like, if you can imagine that. He ended up landing the role for Regan. Doors moment, what if she took up the office from Disney and never went into The Exorcist? The face of this Regan would have been a different girl, and can you imagine a girl at that time who would have been the face of The Exorcist? So it's hard to kind of imagine, because Linda is been in such our psyche for a long time, since 73, that she always will be Linda. She always will be Regan. So to see her tormented and become the tormentor, especially when the demon takes over, and how she acts, and her like the voice linking, like the way she ad-libbed with the voice of Mercedes McCambridge. She, to do the voice, I found fascinating how she did this technique. So basically she swallowed raw eggs, smoked packets of cigarettes, and then, even though she battled with alcoholism, she kind of went back to drinking bottles of whiskey in order to get that voice. Like, so for example,
what an excellent day for an exorcism.
That's the lip syncing was spot on. Like, if you really look at it, like, it nails it. It's like she's saying it. It's incredible. So that's where freaking really lucked out by having someone as great as Linda Blair, but at the age that she was, to deliver that performance, and that's why it's terrifying. And then you've got, and if you look at the other Exorcist movies in the series, 2 and 3 in the beginning, all the actors and actresses in there, they're not slouches. These are some heavy-hitting actors and actresses that came on board to this movie. And so it did attract a lot of the kind of upper echelons of actors and actresses to be a part of this project. So that's why this movie's phenomenal. Like I said, I'm not going to get into the ending, or we've probably seen this movie and already know the ending. But if you're listening to this and you haven't seen it yet, and you're a horror fan, and you're umming and ahhing about whether you want to watch it or not, and like I said, I'm not going to gatekeep you on this one. I'm not going to say you're not a horror fan until you've seen The Exorcist and bullshit like that. I'm just going to say, watch it when you're ready to watch it. Watch it when you are ready, because if you're not ready for this will throw you off a bit. Even though this is a 40-plus-year-old movie, the contents, especially at the end, and what's being said, and the delivery, and the kind of the tension, and the visual horror of it is quite something that no other movie has really done. And so first time horror movie, absolutely not. This isn't. This is wow. It's like getting your L's and jumping into a fucking supercar. Yeah, no, I would definitely get some horror under your belt before you can check this one out. If you are from a religious background and you like horror like I do, my advice would be separate the two and come to this knowing that this is a film. It is made up. It's just a movie. It's not gonna, if you're gonna watch this, it's not gonna jump out and take you. That's my advice. Separate the two. Know that this is a piece of cinema. It's a piece of art. That's all it is. It's not going to come and get you later on at 3 a.m. Like, chill out. And you'll enjoy it, and for that reason. And it is a phenomenal horror film. It's a horror for me because it's almost touching realism for me. The contents of the subject matter, that is, not the actual events. And so that's why when I finally watched it and the end credits came up, I fucking high-fived myself. I was like, I did it. I fucking did it. Like, I climbed the horror Mount Everest, and I didn't die. And I didn't become possessed, like, yeah, high five. Like, that was The Exorcist. So, mate, hands down, 9 out of 10. It still holds up for 1973, which is incredible. Visually, music, cinematography, the special effects, it's just incredible. Anyway, prior to crawling to Exorcist 2, I'm going to rip through these now as a horrible mentions. Exorcist 2. Yeah, wow. Look, Exorcist 2, the actors were good, the script was shit, and that's all I'm going to say on that. I can't piss on too much about it. It came out in 1973-77, so I was a little tacker watching this movie, and I used to misread the title as Exorcist 2, The Hectic, instead of The Heretic. And boy, was this movie fucking hectic. Anyway, so it wasn't wrong. So it goes for an hour and 57 minutes. It was 14 million to be made, and it grossed worldwide 30 million because everyone went back into the theatre wanting The Exorcist. Reagan comes back. Linda Blair, Father Lamont now is the main priest character, played by Richard Burton. You would know him from Who Where the Eagles Dare, which is a great fucking World War II movie. I used to love watching that one. And from Zulu. Both films star Michael Caine, and definitely recommends for that. Dr. Tuscan is played by Louise Fletcher. You would know her as the scary chick from Flowers in the Attic. I don't know if you remember that from the 80s. The title cover for the book used to creep me the shit out as a kid. She was also in Cruel Intentions with Sarah Michelle Gellar. Now, Sharon, who plays Reagan's sister, so Killy Wynn, she comes back in this one, and she's assisting Dr. Tuscan. And then we also get introduced to Kukamu. This is the fucking... It made me laugh. There's a place in Kukamu. Played by James Earl Jones. And he's the African side of the story to this Pazuzu. Anyway, and... So basically, Reagan is like now 18 years old, and she's in this facility, and they're kind of studying her, and the doctor is working with other clients in the building. So I've noticed when I was watching this, there was a lot of people with Down syndrome, people with there was one girl that said I have autism. So the autism, how they viewed autism in 1970s as opposed to how they view the autism now is dramatically different. And you can tell in this film. So these kids are in there, and Dr. Tuscan is studying them to help treat them. So in doing this, Father Lamont is sent by the Vatican to investigate what happens to Father Merrin. Now, because Exorcist 2 is investigating Father Merrin, Exorcist 3 is investigating Father Karras. So Father Lamont gets sent out to investigate what is going on. So he meets up. So the first port of call is Reagan. In doing so, they do a telekinesis kind of thing. And there's a cool special effect where it's almost like a hologram, like Star Wars style hologram, where you see possessed Linda Blair on the bed, with the priests and all that. The makeup for that was shit. And the woman playing it, she actually looked like the people from Under the Stairs, but that's what Wes Craven's movie. That's what it reminded me of. If you look at that, and people started to say this is where the movie lost them, because he goes on to discover, to try and find where this Pazuzu thing is, and you find a young Father Merrin, and he's in Africa, and he's tracking Pazuzu there, and they and he stumbles across the kid that is possessed by Pazuzu, that then later on becomes the head of the the town, the leader or the chieftain of this thing, and he's all about the locusts, because it came with a locust plague, and that's where they were blaming this Pazuzu from arriving, and he got possessed, and now he's not possessed anymore, and because the witch doctors got rid of it. And so Father Lamont goes to Africa, and is subsequently attacked in Africa because of this telekinesis imagery that he saw the death of somebody in Africa, one of the witch doctors or something, and so he goes there with this knowledge. He happens to say this knowledge, and this is where the body of this witch doctor is. Spooks the living fuck out of all the African witch doctors that are like, this guy's fucking, he's a demon, and they turn on him and they start stoning him. They start running and he's getting stoned. People are throwing stones at him and stuff. And so he gets back, and like I said, I'm ad-libbing Exorcist 2 a lot because, and like I said, it's only a horrible mention. And eventually they get to, Reagan. So this whole entire time you're looking at Reagan, and she's super nice in this thing. And the whole entire time you're like, fucking hell, she's gonna go full Exorcist any minute now. You're just waiting for it. And so they do another telekinesis session, and for some reason Pazuzu leads Father Lamont to Washington State, leads him back. So he's hypnotized. He catches a train, he gets on a plane. Reagan's following him this whole entire time. Massive loopholes, like how he bought a ticket, huge loopholes through this whole entire thing. At one stage, the ticket guy goes to her to say, holds Reagan as, what are you doing? And he spins around in this demon voice going, leave her, she's with me. And the guy goes, whoa, shit, and leaves him alone. But like I said, multiple loopholes in this one. Finally gets, and like I said, I'm ad-libbing. If you haven't seen The Exorcist 2, I'm not saying to rush out and see it. I'm going to probably add more questions than answer them, so probably give it a wide berth. I'm kind of gunning through all the shit in order to kind of give you what The Exorcist 2 is trying to get at. And they get to the house, the actual house of Reagan's childhood home, and the big showdown, and the demon is waiting inside her bedroom, and he's projecting itself as 18-year-old Reagan. So she's got the glowing eyes, but she's wearing a nightie. So they really sexualize the shit out of Linda Blair in this one, right? Because this is where they were going with it. Because they were trying to suggest that Father Lamont wanted to get on with Reagan the whole time. And so this is what happens. Like, the demon then starts saying, come to me, come and join me on the bed. And, he does. And because he's under the influence, and she's like, stroking him and caressing him, and, and he's all over her as well. And she's saying, kill her. And so he turns around, and there's Reagan standing in the room going, no, it's me, kind of, the real Reagan. So Reagan actually isn't possessed this whole entire time. Pazuzu's kind of floating around and manages to get in contact with Father Lamont via hypnotism. So again, they've gone back to what's happened in The Exorcist, the first one. And so anyway, we kind of get this really weird, in my notes here, I put Poltergeist Ending, because that's what the fuck happened. Like, this weird shit goes down with the building, and you get this Poltergeist ending. Like, and I'm like, I wonder if Steven Spielberg pinched this ending for the Poltergeist. Linda Blair fucking hated this. Like, she was like, but couldn't get out of it because she was contracted to do a sequel for The Exorcist because it was so popular. And The Exorcist 2 got locked in, and because of the sequel and her contract stating that if it went into a sequel, she had to be a part of the sequel. So her parents and her and her agent and everyone kind of was like, I don't want to be a part of this movie, but they were locked into it, and she couldn't, whatever. And the actors were not keen on this film as well because they all stated that the script was weak. James Earl Jones, not a massive fan of this film whatsoever. Like, and if people brought up The Exorcist 2, he got really pissed off about it. Like, he didn't want to talk about it at all. So it reflects. So this is an example where you can have all these king-hitting actors and actresses, but if your script is weak and full of fucking plot holes like this one, it's not going to make sense. The funny thing about Exorcist 2 is I watched or tried to watch this like 3 times, and I fell asleep every single time through this movie. And it took ages for me to actually sit down and watch it from end to start to end to try and get my head around what the fuck this movie was about, because I just nod off. And then I'd wake up and I'd be like, where the fuck am I? Because there's so many plot holes. So not the best one in the franchise, but if you want to watch it for the sake of saying that you've watched all the Exorcist movies, have at it, but just know that there's a lot of plot twists in it, and it is what it is. So, spider walking towards Exorcist 3, so 1990. Now, William Blatty's back with this one. Hands down, this is my favourite Exorcist opening score. The music for this one was like, whoa, shit. And because this is what I watched first, I was like, oh, fuck. Like, this is pretty good. Like, the mist through the town, creepy actually, I should say. And opening sequence, and then leads into these murders. And ever since then, like I said, growing up Catholic and stuff, I was never really big on doing confessions, and I've only done it a couple of times because our primary school was pretty big on it, and the priests were kind of introducing us kids to what a confession was. After that, we never did it. I fucking didn't do it because of Exorcist 3. The cast for this, I couldn't get the stats on how much this movie cost to make, so apologies about that. I just couldn't get anything. The movie goes for an hour and 50 minutes. It was done in 1990. Father Dyer, who's now played by Ed, it just made me laugh. Fucking Ed Flanders. Holy shit. So close to Ned Flanders. This is incredible. Oakley. So fucking the thing that made me laugh about Ed Flanders, this guy looks like Mike Whitney. Now, for Australian listeners, and you'd get Mike Whitney from Who Dares Wins. He's an Australian athlete, now commentator. Haven't really seen much of him at all. But he's Father Dyer, who apparently was supposed to be, who was originally played by William O'Malley in the first one. You look at the two together and you're thinking, how the fuck is this guy like the same person? Anyway, so that happens a lot in Exorcist 3. You have Lieutenant Kindleman, again, played by one guy, now played by George Scott. Now, George Scott, you would know him from Patton, the movie. And then you've got the Gemini Killer, played by Fred Dorff. When I watched this, I immediately connected Brad with Child's Play. So I was like, right, this is the dude. If I ever made a horror film and I needed a scary, kooky fucker, this was the guy. Like, Brad, number one choice for me. So this patient X turns out to be Father Karras, right? And so this is kind of the thing about Exorcist 3. And it's again played by a very older Jason Miller. So we're of the interpretation that at the end of The Exorcist, Father Karras does a stumble and dies at the flag. And Father Dyer is next to him, giving him his last rites before he goes. The thing is, if you watch that scene, you don't see him take his last breath. He's just doing the last rites, and then there's the last chain. So it was very clever. What you thought you saw and what actually happened were two different things, because it actually enabled the loophole for Blatty to say Father Karras is back. Now, Dr. Temple is played by Scott Wilson. We all know him from The Walking Dead as Herschel from The Walking Dead. And then we've got Nurse Addleton, played by Nancy Fish. Fuck, was she the most creepiest nurse. So Lindemann is investigating these murders that happen across Washington State. The hallmarks of these murders are trophies or the style of killings that the Gemini Killer would do. Now, while investigating this, he comes across Father Karras in this mental hospital, and so begins The Exorcist 3, and the demon, Pazuzu, kind of there and tormenting Lieutenant Kindleman, because you're seeing Father Karras 1 minute, but you're seeing the face of Brad Dourif the whole time, and he is the Gemini Killer. So it's just Lieutenant Kindleman with the Gemini Killer, but it's actually, the body is Father Karras, and that's this to and from this whole entire time. And then there's the priest comes in to do an exorcism, and there's the big showdown. The major thing in between this movie is the shears that are used in the decapitation of the murder victims. All the killings are done off screen. You don't see them. You see the aftermath. But there was the one scene, and we all talked about it, that scared the living shit out of everyone. And like I said, my dad and I had to pause the film and clean up afterwards, because we were not ready for that, and we had to peel ourselves off the ceiling, like I suppose a lot of people had to in that scene, because it is such a build-up jump scare that you don't know it's going to happen, right? And it really throws you off, because there's fucking cops everywhere. and the cop walks in the room, cop walks out of the room, cop walks into the scene, walks out of scene, and you're moving down this corridor like you would as any other normal scene would do. Like there's nothing to suggest, and then you get the false jump scare with the nurse, and then you get the fucking left hook, right? And I, to this day, still say it's the best jump scare ever made. No one will top it, right? It just nobody will top this. This is the ultimate jump scare ever done. And then afterwards, he's explaining what has happened to the nurse, and it's just really gross. And you're like, holy shit! Like this is really. Like, what the fuck is this? And it really, Exorcist 3 is almost like a very scary episode of the X-Files. Take out Kindleman and all these other things, and you put, Fox Mulder and Scully here, you've got yourself an X-Files episode about a killer that's possessed by a demon. Like, holy shit. And yeah, that's why it's... The Exorcist 3 isn't as strong, but it's the stronger one in the sequel sequences of the Exorcist series. And then later, and then there's a scene where the demon manages to get out, and then you physically see these shears, right? The chrome on these things, and you just, when I first saw this thing and it's attacking Kindleman's daughter. And the shears come out and almost take her head off. And I'm looking at the shears going, who the fuck makes that? Like, what shears look like this? Like, I've looked at different kinds of garden shears. No one, mate, you can't get it at fucking Bunnings for $20. Like, how terrifying these shears on top of everything else that's going on. So, look, that's pretty much all I'm going to say about Exorcist 3. Definite recommend. If you haven't checked this out, fucking do yourself a favour on this one, because this is a real good thing. But it doesn't have Linda Blair in it. It becomes more of a crime X-Files style film, but fucking brilliant nonetheless. Now, The Exorcist, the beginning, 2004. This is where I went, right, I'm going to watch The Exorcist now. Because of this movie, right? Because I thought, okay, it's got a decent cast in it, and it's made and it's done by William Blackley as well. He's $80 million. It makes 78 million worldwide, which is not bad. Like, so a bit short, but not that bad. The director for this one is Rennie Halen. You'd know him from Deep Blue Sea. That's who he directed. This movie goes for 1 hour and 54. The cast in it is pretty good. So you got Father Merrin, who's played by Stellan Skarsgård. So that's the Skarsgård boys. That's their dad. He's very well known to play good and bad characters. And he plays Father Merrin in this one. So middle-aged 40-year-old Father Merrin. Sarah is played by Isabella Scarparico. Father Francis is played by James Darcy. Joseph, the small African boy, is played by Rennie Sweeney. Major Granville is played by Julian Woodhane, and Jeffries is played by Alan Ford. You know the Cockney guy from Snatch. He was also in Cockneys versus Zombies. So the story of this is you got the opening, and it's like massive field, kind of like the Last Crusade, and everyone's dead on the ground. But it works out that everyone had murdered each other, and you later on find out the only survivor was this priest, who was. And as he's stumbling through the bodies, he sees a priest who was clutching the head of Pazuzu, the same head statue of Pazuzu that you see in the start of the first Exorcist that was uncovered by the diggers and the archaeologists. Because Father Merrin is an archaeologist. He's haunted by what had occurred to him in World War Two. So this is a good one, because in the beginning, the Exorcist, the beginning, you get the backstory of Father Merrin and where he comes from. You learn that he's a Dutch priest, like that he was a parish priest in Holland in World War Two when the Nazis occupied it. They gather the people in the village and start executing them one by one. And the Gestapo says to Father Merrin, "There's no God here, priest," and then shoots this kid in the head, right? And this is why Father Merrin goes, "Nah, not a priest anymore, because I could have done something, or my faith could have done something, and to save these people." So he's wrestling with this. He's an alcoholic because of this. You can see he's grappling with his faith. This is another underlining theme between Exorcist 1, 2, 3, and this one here. All the priests in this film are grappling with their faith. They got to the point where they're like, "I've done this gig for a long time. I've seen a lot of really bad shit that humans are doing to each other." And these are what is affecting these priests in all these movies across the board. So mainly Merrin in this one, because of all this horrible shit that went down in World War Two. So he comes to this archaeological site because of this church that has been uncovered. Unbeknown to him, that this church that has been uncovered has been the site of Pazuzu and the people being influenced by Pazuzu and end up killing each other on this thing. So when he enters the site, the crucifix has been snapped and hung upside down, and right where this altar is, and he's going, "Well, shit, okay, hang on, this isn't real. This is now a satanic kind of worshipping area, like this has become, because of the upside down cross and all this other stuff that's been kind of put there." And then he realized, no, hang on, this actually is being built to worship Satan, not God. And so when that uncovery occurs, it really kind of makes the film really interesting. Like, I was like, "Oh shit, okay, this is a bit different," because usually it's like a church has been converted into something, as whether this has been built like that, and even the priests are saying, "Look, the spears are pointing downwards, like this has been deliberately made like this." And then you see Pazuzu, the actual statue there, and then you work out that the beyond the altar is the real area where all the human sacrificing was made, and that's where the entity is released from. And this is where we have that connection to the Exorcist, the first one, with the older Father Merrin, and they uncovered the head again, and the way he looks at it now matches the Exorcist, the beginning, because you're now realizing that old Father Merrin is remembering everything that's now happened in Exorcist, the beginning, now in 2004. So everything that unfolds in this movie, at the end, with Father Merrin and him, donning the velvet coloured robe that you put on when you're performing the rite of exorcism, because there is a colour to the veil that they wear and the specific, prayers and stuff that they have to do. Once he puts that back on and he cracks open the Bible and he's like, going through the rites of the exorcism, Pazuzu is knocked on his ass, because he was kind of hoping, with everything that's tormented this guy, he could make Father Merrin even more weaker by continually playing this scenario and making him spiritually weak, as whether he just kind of, Father Merrin gets his shit together, puts on the veil and starts the exorcism, and like I said, ends up defeating or putting away Pazuzu anyway for that period of time. The movie itself is really interesting throughout the thing, because the local indigenous native tribe around there is getting the heebies on, because this priest has rocked up and all this weird shit starting to happen. and because they're starting to waken Pazuzu in this area and they're digging, and so they get really angry with the presence of this thing, and so the British guy there calls in the army, a battalion of British soldiers. And so when this happens, it creates tensions amongst the tribe. Of course, heightened tensions. Everyone's nervous. Someone's trigger happy. A gun goes off, and that just starts this massacre. They happen to be in this one spot where this Pazuzu entity gets out and influences everybody all in that area. And so, in the meantime, you're kind of tracking who is possessed by Pazuzu. And then it's revealed who is possessed by Pazuzu, and you have the possession sequence. And Father Merrin has to kind of, get his shit together, spiritually and physically, and say, right, I need to defeat this thing in order to survive. And so he does. And then so at the end of the movie, he's taken his faith back on, and he's back to being a priest. And now we can go and watch Exorcist, the first one, and it time matches, because when the Exorcist, the beginning is filmed, it's in like the 50s, like late 40s into the 50s kind of thing. So when you see aged Father Merrin in 1973 in the first Exorcist, it matches up time-wise to Father Merrin, and then we learn, so it was interesting seeing a younger Father Merrin anyway in this, and kind of explaining his deal and where he comes from. So that's why I really liked The Exorcist, the beginning, and I thought it was a really good way. So my advice, when you want to sit down and you haven't seen any of the Exorcist movies, my advice to you is to see The Exorcist, the beginning first. Get an idea of what's going on, because then when you see elderly Father Merrin in 73, it will make sense. And so when you go and attempt to watch Exorcist 2, it kind of makes sense a bit, but then loses the plot midway through the film, and that's kind of the end of it. And then Exorcist 3, like I said, is its own thing, and it's essentially a glorified X-Files episode. So that's kind of where it all sits with those. So Exorcist, the beginning, for me, gets an 8 out of 10. Exorcist 3, for me, gets an 8 out of 10. Exorcist 2 gets a 6 out of 10. And Exorcist, the first one, gets a 9 out of 10 from me. So Exorcist, the beginning, as a first-time horror film, yes, I can say you can do that. That's fine. That's all good. Exorcist 3 is the first-time horror film. Yeah, you could, because like I said, it gets away with the fact of being a glorified kind of crime X-Files episode. So it will creep you out, but it won't terrify you to the point where you're sleeping with the lights on, So, yeah, excellent. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Again, apologies for the lateness. My work's really out of control at the moment with rostering, and I got given a lot of 12-hour shifts, so that was quite a hard thing to balance, and then time the episode to release it. So apologies for the lateness, but it finally came out, and hopefully now Pazuzu doesn't get its hands on my roster again, and it leaves me alone. So yeah, looking forward to the up and coming episodes. I've got them planned out, and yes, excellent. So thank you very much for listening. Like I said, talk to your friends about it. Like and subscribe on Facebook if you haven't already done it, and like and subscribe on YouTube. Thank you for everybody that answered my question about what everyone was feeling about The Exorcist before they watched it, because I knew, all the adults saying, oh, it's really scary, blah, 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 would psych everybody out. So I just wanted to kind of gauge how old everyone was when they actually first watched it, which I thought was interesting. So if you're pretty keen to read all those comments, definitely go onto my Facebook group, and in the comment section you'll see everyone add their experiences. So thank you for for sharing. Excellent. So thank you very much. I hope everything's all well with you guys. Stay scary, and again, I will see you in the crypt.
Adelaide Horror Podcast with Zombie Joe.